Okay, hello everyone. We're going to start now. So, welcome everyone who's come. Welcome to all the candidates and all the people who've come to ask questions or just to watch candidates answer questions, if that's what you're into. Just a quick announcement before we start. We're only going to be hearing from 6 positions today because unfortunately the VP postgrad only candidate dropped out or withdrew from the race. So we'll be reopening nominations for the VP postgrad in summer. So just to let you know, so only 6 today. And I think we're going to start off with the welfare and campaigns candidates. So could we get the welfare and campaigns candidates to come to the front, please? Okay, just you today.
Just me, fantastic.
Okay, so we're going to start with the questions we got on the online form, and then we're going to go to the 2 media societies, and then we're going to open it up to the floor to let you know how it's going to work. So the first question from online, there's only one. What experiences do you have which suit this role, and how do you think these have prepared you for a job as a full-time officer in the SU? Let me know if you want me to repeat any of that.
Well, I was the women's officer in the SU from 2021 to 2022, which means I think I have pretty good experience in understanding how the SU processes work and in understanding how effective campaigns can be launched or not. I relaunched the End Period Poverty campaign. It was pretty small at the beginning, and it's been very successfully continued, but I'm very glad to have that experience because I think I can understand how you go from thinking of an idea, promising it in your manifesto, to actually realising it over the course of a year. I've also worked in the Warwick Anti-Sexism Society as an exec member in my 2nd year, which means I think I understand how the society's processes work, and I've been active in sports societies in Warwick and also on my year abroad. So I think that's a pretty wide range of experiences that would prepare me.
Thank you. All right, and now we're going to go to Board. Yeah. For your questions.
So Archie from the board was asking me, last year's report and support received quite a few more disclosures, and that was a significant increase. What are you going to do to help the reporting system better overall and make it easier to make these disclosures, and how will you try and reduce the number of disclosures overall, like attacking at the source?
I'm not sure that reducing the number of disclosures is particularly a goal that you would want to have. If report and support is available, people should be able to access it.
But in terms of reporting numbers are going down for reasons that you're attacking, reasons why people report. So, for instance, for sexual harassment, you're targeting sexual harassment, and that's resulting in a reduced number of reports.
Sorry, I don't fully understand the question, but I can answer the first part.
So, to simplify a little bit, maybe, so that's my bad. If you're trying to tackle sexual harassment disclosures which are happening, how are you going to try and reduce sexual harassment on campus?
Oh, okay,
and as
got
a result of that, reduce the number of disclosures?
I mean, it's a pretty big problem. We had a lot of discussion about this in my 2nd year, and I think a lot of it is building on what's already there. I would plan to lobby for a resource pack to be included in halls in the first week of freshers, to have signposting to all university wellbeing services and report and support, make sure that people from their first year understand what is out there, what support is available, and how they can access support if they need it. I would be working with report and support with the all the sexual health services, the gender task force, everything that's out there already to work at improving intersectionality, making sure that the processes are very comprehensive. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes at the moment, so a lot of it would be carrying on what's already there. But I would want to focus on improving intersectionality and making sure that everyone feels safe and understand what processes are there.
Thank you.
Next. Any other questions for the board? Yep.
This is Luke from the board. Is the difference in the way certain academic departments deal with welfare issues a concern for you? And if so, how do you intend to alleviate them?
I know anecdotally that there's definitely differences between academic departments. My department's quite small, so I have quite a close relationship with my personal tutor, but I know bigger departments like economics and engineering, sometimes people really struggle with accessing support. Because I think a real issue can be signposting. A lot of people might not know what's there. It would be making sure that personal tutors and members in departments understand how they can effectively signpost to students, how they can make sure that the whole range of services is available, and try to standardise that across departments. Because I wouldn't want to just like rely on personal experience, right? So probably talking to students, making sure that they can disclose to me as a welfare officer what problems they have, finding out if that would need like a wider survey of students about which departments maybe have better practices or not. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions from the board, or should we move on to Raw? Okay, Raw.
Cool. I'm Amelia from Raw, and the first question you kind of already touched on, just expanding on it. What university services will you work with to carry out your manifesto pledges?
So I think the SU campaigns team is a pretty essential one. I know they were really, really helpful for the Empirical Poverty campaign, so I think I'd be working pretty closely with them. Also the SU Advice Centre, especially for cost of living support and making sure that I know what problems are affecting students. I think you sit on the Gender Task Force. I know there's some other task forces, the cost of living like crisis group. Essentially, I would want to make sure I understand exactly what's out there so that I can know what I need to work with and report and support as well.
This is Naomi from Raw. I think just to add to that, you mentioned the SU Advice Centre. How will you work to promote their work so that students can benefit from specialist support?
Yeah, I think it is a problem that people don't really know it's there. I actually only found out about it a couple years ago instead of in my first year. So I think the issue of freshers not knowing what's out there is like a real problem. So I would want to have that resource pack available for freshers in their first year. Also things available to academic departments, to society, so they can promote it to their members as well.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to open up the floor for questions. So if anyone has any questions, put your hand up. Or if there's none, we can move on. Okay. Cool. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to have the candidates for democracy and development. So Sasha, come up. So you've got a few online questions to start with, and as before, then we'll move on to the media and then the rest of the floor. Okay, so your first online question is, how would you improve transparency and accountability of the SU if you believe it needs improving?
I think there are definite spaces where it needs improving. So with regards to all student votes, there are kind of confusions in the processes that happens once a motion has been passed. So it then goes to the board, and I think there needs to be greater transparency within that system of who the board are, how they get established into their positions, and what power they have over the kind of democratic vote of students.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, beyond existing SU structures, how do you plan to improve engagement with the SU?
The university has quite a clear structure within itself from the departments and the courses that we're all in. So I think it would be very important to work with the different departments to make sure that student voice can be heard. On top of that, obviously, societies are kind of loosely related with the SU, but they are such a powerful place for finding students who are engaged with kind of community events within the SU, within the student body, but not necessarily engaged within student voice.
Okay, so your last online question is, in a period of low turnout in our ASVs, how else will you consult students and find out what is important to them?
So again, as I just said, I think societies are such a good form of trying to reach people's voices, because they're people who might be passionate about something like a sport or climate, which is a society that I was involved with, but not necessarily be within the kind of SU ecosystem. But then also I think it's about getting visibility for things like the all-student votes on campus, which I think would be a way that I would do that is by establishing kind of fairs, so that the people who are putting motions through can kind of talk to you about why that is something that you are interested in doing.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the board now, so over to the board.
Yeah, so the number of candidates in the SU elections for the spring officer elections has greatly decreased since last year, and many people are running unopposed in positions. How do you feel about the SU's capacity to effectively run elections when positions are unopposed, and do you believe students understand their capacity to reopen nominations as a vote as well?
I mean, it's such a difficult question to answer because I am someone who has been involved in SU politics, so there's kind of like slang and acronyms that are used and thrown about like RON, and I think it's kind of a joke within that. And I would say that more work needs to be done to let students know that if this is a manifesto that you're unhappy with, if you would be that unwilling to have someone who believes those things vote to be fulfilling that role. But also, I think with regards to how few people are running for positions, there's an element there that is based on the kind of community within the wider student body. So if you have that sense of community, then you know that this is something that I want to preserve, or there are changes that I want to make within this structure. And that would then kind of empower you or make you feel like you should be involved with kind of SU things. And so I'd want to work with VP for Welfare and the rest of the FTO team to make sure that there is that community element that then means that people do want to run for those roles.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the board? Alright, we'll move on to Raw then.
In the cost of living crisis, how will you work with the SU and the university commercial outlets to provide a range of cost-effective food options to students?
So food is obviously very important. The breakfast club that was going on this term for Tuesdays and Thursdays has been really helpful, and I really respect that. But also it's kind of lunchtime options and how you can stay on campus, because obviously if you're on campus all day, then you know, you need to eat and find the time to do that and do it affordably. Looking at SU outlets, like the prices are so expensive, and then to get nutritional and healthy food on top of that is really crazy. I think it would be working with maybe groups outside of the SU who are focused on providing cheap, nutritional, healthy food to ensure that that is something that all students can access.
And the next question from Raw, you've touched on before about how you're really passionate about sustainability, and we were asking how you work to make the SU more sustainable and hold the university accountable for its net zero targets.
So this is a question of two parts, obviously. Within the SU, there's the question of the outlets, making sure that they aren't wasting food, that they are reducing plastic as much as possible, and I know that there have been ongoing campaigns to kind of reduce the use of plastic at POP, which is so difficult because of the kind of facilities within the union as is. But I would kind of support ongoing work on that and try and get the union signed up to Surfers Against Sewage, which is a campaign that is working for plastic-free communities. With pushing the university to get greener goals, I think a big issue there is the greenwashing that's going on within campus. So there are a lot of kind of organisations that campus promotes. For instance, I got an email from BP the other day that was like, come to our sustainable fair, and it's BP, which is oil and petroleum and not very sustainable. So I'd be pushing the university to kind of make those declarations more obvious and not allow the ongoing greenwashing.
If that's it from the media, we'll go wider onto the floor. So if anyone has any questions on the floor, put your hand up. Quiet audience today. Okay, well done then. Feel free to go. Okay, next we'll have the candidates for societies. So Joe, come up.
Hello.
We've got quite a few online questions to start with, so to let you know. So your first one is, what experience do you have working within SU systems past your role as an exec member?
Past my role as the exec of PG, well, I've got experience in the SOX forum. I'm a member of that as the PGT representative. I'm also part of the student council as the same role. So that's definitely got me involved within the SU system and taught me a lot about how the system works, especially with societies. And yeah, as part of the exec, obviously that doesn't answer the question, but as part of the exec, I've had to discuss a range of issues with the SU. So I've definitely gone through the systems.
Okay, thank you. Okay, second question is, if elected, what is the biggest, most important thing for SOCs you'll be focusing on your time on across the year?
For me, probably the key one probably for SOCs is probably promotion and making people aware of the societies out there and the benefits of being part of society, basically enhancing society membership as much as possible. Affordability as well. I'd certainly make it a much more affordable, easier for people and more welcoming for people to be part of societies. I would just like to see more society involvement in general across the board.
And your next one is an incredibly vague one, but what will you do for academic societies?
For academic societies, one of my policies is to have hopefully within SOLC meetings, the actual representatives of academic, like the presidents or some key member of the exec, to be involved in SOLC meetings to actually extend a sort of academic sort of society contact. I'd like to see more of that in general. I'd like to have more opportunities for academic promotion or some sort of debate system, or just enhance basically experiences.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so your next one is, are there any improvements that you will work on for the new society's applications and onboarding processes?
Sorry, can you say again?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Are there any improvements that you will work on for the new society's application and the onboarding processes? For new societies, I'll definitely make it more clear of how to do the system. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about how the system's run. Certainly as part of SOCS Forum, we get a lot of confusion about like what they're meant to do, what the actual process is. There's certainly a lot of people who don't see establishing a society as an option. So I'm definitely going to make people more aware. I'm thinking of maybe like an email at the start of term establishing how easy the system is, or definitely on the SU website as well. I'm going to simplify the exec resources and things like that. Okay, thank you. Your next one is, any ideas on how to increase the affordability of societies?
In terms of affordability, so I'd definitely aim to decrease the price of SOCs and Fed fees. Maybe like stabilise the Fed fee in general. But obviously, I'll have to discuss that with the relevant people. I would like to establish some sort of further subsidies for circling, and just make it further subsidise the options that are available at circling and those sort of things.
Thank you. Okay, and your last one from online. How will you improve promotion of societies? A few ways. One of the key ways is to sort of send an email at the start of term, specifying what categories of societies there are, and therefore what societies people can join as part of that. I'll definitely try and make it easier for people to access the societies for them on the website. And I'd look to enhance where people can promote their societies, where they can put posters up and things like that. Just in general.
Thank you.
All right. Now we'll move on to the media societies. So, Paul.
Yeah, I'm Emily.
Hello.
Criticism was made at yesterday's question time regarding the allocation of funds to societies that support ethnic minority groups.
Okay.
How would you work with the part-time officers to ensure marginalised groups are effectively supported through their societies?
well, I'll speak to them, see the main issues that they're seeing with them. I'm not aware of the specific issue itself, but I'll definitely aim to sort out the issue in the great way possible. So I'll definitely try and speak to the parties involved. I'll definitely speak to the execs. Trying to reach a solution, really. Yeah, hopefully hopefully it can be done.
Any other questions from the board? All right,
Right.
thank you. I'll move to the raw.
And from Raw, looking forward to like the next academic year,
Okay.
how will you help support societies in the transition period as new execs begin to be elected, ensuring that all members will receive the training that they need to do their job?
Is this over the summer period or
Term
okay?
two to term one election.
So I'll definitely try and once again email, establish a contact, maybe WhatsApp, so things like that. That'd be a most efficient way of making people aware. Exec resources as well that can be definitely made more simpler. Definitely establish plainly what it is that people need to do, what the training is, and catch up on anyone who's not reached the adequate goal for it. Yeah.
So a lot of societies on campus have to work within quite tight budgets for their activities. What are you going to do in your role to support them?
I'll try and I'll increase the ways that I'll try and increase the ways that they can access funding. So I'll try and make it easier for them to get as much funding as possible. I will also push for more funding in general from the systems. I'll also hope to get more sponsorship options as well. I think the system. I think there's definitely a potential with local businesses and things like that to get further funding into societies. Obviously, there's a limit with what companies there are and all that, but I could try.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we're going to open the questions up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, Ben.
Hi, thank you for running.
That's all right.
As a former welfare officer myself on
Yeah.
several society execs, something that's been consistently highlighted to me and also that I've learned firsthand is how challenging that particular role can be for the often undergraduates with no formal training that are put into that post. Do you have any plans to increase the support or training or anything else available for welfare officers?
I'll definitely work with the welfare team to ensure that. I'd like to promote welfare as much as possible. I don't have anything formal because I don't fully know the details of it. But welfare for me is a key issue that I'd like to make sure that it's all up to board. I'm open. I'm open for any ideas, basically.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the floor? Yeah.
Yeah, being a society president over the last year, one of the biggest issues I've kind of had to face is actually the issue itself and all the paperwork that you file for events. So, for example, I ran a trip to Namora literally last week, and all I wanted to do was offer a £20 travel subsidy. And I was told by the SU it'd be so much easier to just not offer that travel subsidy, which I don't think quite understands the point of what WP student is and the support that they need. So I was wondering what you're planning on doing, kind of cutting down all this unnecessary paperwork for people like me.
We can definitely aim to cut down as much as possible. Certainly with changes, like there's been a number of things with constitutions changes that I'd like to simplify, make it quicker. Maybe in your case, like if it is like a small fee amount, maybe there could be an automatic approval. But obviously there's other parties involved. I'm not sure whether they'll let me through with that. But I do agree about simplifying. There's a lot of like random changes that's like often required, and it's like that could be quicker. There's a lot of approvals and SOX forum meetings that has to be done with things, and yeah, I'd certainly like to speed that up. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Emma?
How would you go about sports societies, and what do you see the future of sports societies looking like, given there's not really a line that's drawn at the moment between clubs and societies? We have some sports societies, which we call them, which very much blur the line.
Yeah, there is. I'd have to work with the sports sector to see whether a sport officer about whether we'll either make the line clearer or maybe we blur it a bit more. Maybe there is like a more element of collaboration that can be done. Maybe some sort of way of like combining both systems together. But I'm fine with working with the sports officer about that and seeing what the best outcome is.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? If not, you're free to go.
All right, no worries. All right, thank you.
Okay, next one is the education candidates. So could the education candidates come to the front? Any of the other candidates here today? Or if not, we can start. Okay, so you already have one online question, so lucky you. Your question is, what experience do you have with... Oh no, wrong one, sorry. My bad. What makes you personally motivated to increase accessibility and diversity at Warwick?
So as a disabled student myself, I think it's definitely important to ensure that education is accessible for all students. Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
So, what makes you personally motivated to increase accessibility and diversity at Warwick?
Okay, yeah, so adding to that, my own experience and experience of my peers makes me motivated to improve things, because I've seen things such as lecture rooms that aren't directly accessible. For example, L5 isn't directly accessible for wheelchair users without going through L3, which can cause disruptions to lectures. And I've also seen difficulties in students trying to request extensions or obtain mitigating circumstances, and I think that's definitely something that should be improved.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the media societies. So, Paul?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Emily. To what extent do you believe that students effectively engage in departmental and course feedback opportunities, and what would you do to encourage greater participation from the student body?
Okay, so firstly I think the student staff liaison and committees are very important for students to provide their feedback and to suggest improvements to their department, and for the staff to work with them on that. I think, sorry, was it about students?
Yeah, how would you improve participation with campaigns that the SU run for how would you improve?
Okay, so I think firstly there needs to be a great awareness among students that things like the SSLC exists, that they have course reps, that they have these that they have feedback forms on Moodle that they can use anonymously to submit their feedback. I think, yeah, communicating that to them is firstly an important thing, and also encouraging the running of students for SSLC and course reps, as well as looking to improve the SSLC. So one thing I plan to do is to survey the current SSLC and the course reps to see how effective they feel that the meetings have been this year, and how much they felt their feedback was taken on board. And based on that response, I will take it forward to work with departments to make sure that students feel that they are getting more out of these meetings.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Luke from the board. What part of academia do you think the university needs to improve and tackle the most?
So I would say creating fair opportunities for all students. So that includes things like keeping in self-certs, making it accessible for students to submit to mitigating circumstances and receiving support for that. So yeah, I think overall just creating fair opportunities to ensure every student can engage effectively in their education.
Thank you. Is that all for the board? Okay, thank you. Now on to the raw.
So I just wanted to mention something that I didn't spot in your manifesto. How are you going to work to improve the availability of study spaces on campus?
Okay, yeah, so yeah. So I think I will work with departments to see how much study spaces they can offer to students themselves, because I understand that can vary across departments. Some departments have like large common rooms for students to study in, and yeah, others may not have as big study spaces. So I think that would be one area to focus on. I think also working with other areas of the university, like the library and other places that may be able to offer more study spaces. So I know there's like some improvements that are intending to be made to the library to increase the amount of study spaces students have.
And our second question from Raw is, as co-chair of the Student Learning Experience and Engagement Committee, how will you ensure that student interests are represented to university management?
Okay, so could you clarify student interest in terms of what exactly?
I guess just from, increasing engagement and discourse with students, the feedback that you get, how will you make sure that that feedback is then passed on and communicated well to the university's management?
Okay, I think again this will deal with a lot of work through SSLC and ensuring that students are aware that there are opportunities for them to provide feedback. So I think particularly for first year students, they might not be aware that there are spaces for them to provide feedback either directly to their course reps or through anonymous forums on Moodle. So I think that's how I'd get students to engage more with that, advertising those opportunities more, and then working with management to make sure that students' feedback is being taken on board and they are doing as much as possible to resolve their issues.
Thank you both. Any questions from the floor? Yep,
All of the candidates list a decolonised and accessible curriculum as a key pledge. What would that mean for you in practice?
So in terms of decolonising the curriculum, I will continue the work that's currently being done by the decolonisation advocates in the SU. And as part of that, I will make sure to centre marginalised voices, especially for people from the Global South. And another part of that will also be beginning work on querying the curriculum.
Did you want to answer the second part, accessibility?
Sorry, could you repeat the second part?
Sorry, I'm going to just have to repeat the question, so I've got it written down, and I don't want to misquote it. All of the candidates list a decolonised and accessible curriculum as a key manifesto pledge. What does that mean for you in practice? I say it again, please speak.
Could you say again, sorry?
All of the candidates list a decolonised and accessible curriculum as a key manifesto pledge. What does that mean for you in practice?
Oh, okay, yes. So in terms of accessibility, as I briefly mentioned, it will involve ensuring that students can get support, so usually from their personal tutors or another member of staff in their department if their personal tutors are not available, to ensure that if they require extensions for any reason, they can get it. If they need to submit mitigating circumstances, they have someone to review their mitigating circumstances before they submit it. And I think also ensuring that rooms that are used for teaching, for timetable teaching, are suitable in terms of the size, accessibility and stuff, so you're not having like a module with like 90 people on it where 90 people are turning up in a room that's designed for like 50 people, which has been the case for me and some other people that I know.
Thank you. Have we got any other questions on the floor? If not, I'm free to go. Next we'll do the sports candidates. Louis and Ben, please.
to need to grab a pint after this. Surely it needs to happen.
At some point, 100%.
So we've got a few online questions to start with as usual, and then we'll move on to media and then the floor. So
Are we just can I double check? Are there any time limits on questions or anything?
there is a time limit. What's the time limit again?
1 minute.
1 minute on each question. Okay. So your first question is, how are you going to bring down the cost of the sports pass, especially considering that is something controlled by Warwick Sport?
Do you want to go or do you want me to?
So yeah, a lot of progress has been made this year so far in reducing the cost of sport at Warwick, and it's a vital issue now with the cost of living crisis. The 25% reduction in term 2 sports memberships achieved by the current VP, Emma, I think really shows a willingness to engage on behalf of both TSU and Warwick Sport. And then the new plan for sport at Warwick put forward by Warwick Sport and a new director of sport there and presented at Sports Assembly also calls to make an active lifestyle a more integral part of the student experience at Warwick. And reducing costs is obviously in line with that objective. So as such, I think Warwick Sport in particular and the SU, they'll both be open to this idea. It suits all of their objectives. I've also been able to build a good rapport with both officials at Warwick Sport and the SU through my work as Sports Forum Chair this year. And as such, I feel strongly I'd be able to work well with Warwick Sport in particular, but also the SU, with everyone, to be able to achieve the goal of reducing the cost of student sport.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good points there, because at the end of the day, the money needs to come from somewhere, and we'd ideally want that money to not come from students. So a lot of it is convincing Warwick Sport to get on board, and with this new leadership, they really do seem positive, and they want to help students. So that's a really good start already. Another part of it is convincing the university as a whole to get on board with student sport, and that's maybe a bigger challenge, but at the end of the day, like, regional leadership is something the university is passionate about, and potentially we're not a regional leader when it comes to sport at the moment, and it's about more than just results at Bucks. It's about getting people on board, getting people engaged in sports at all levels, and I'm really hoping we can work together to achieve that.
Thank you.
Do I have a quick chance to add something small?
Very quickly.
Well, yeah, I just agree, and I think it's about selling sport as more than just a performance thing. It's about the whole active lifestyles for everyone at the uni. It's about making it part of that integral experience. And yeah, I think we're selling it better to the uni, and I think that work's already begun.
Okay. So your next question is, what do you want to do for off-campus clubs as VP Sports?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good question, and as coming from an off-campus sport myself, starting up windsurfing when I came to the union in my first year, I have a lot of ideas about what we can do for these clubs. And it's important to know that's not at the expense of on-campus, but it is something that's really been lacking at the moment. So bringing down the cost of the off-campus pass is an obvious one, and we do really need to do that. But there is also a lot more we can do. So like the biggest costs off-campus clubs face is facilities, and these facilities don't clash with Warwick Sport, otherwise we'd be using Warwick Sport. So why can't we try and get Warwick Sport on board with maybe forming relationships with these facilities in order to reduce the costs that these facilities charge our off-campus clubs. Again, club development, that's something that can really help off-campus as well, so trying to push for more funding for admin club development to see how we can support off-campus clubs as well as on-campus is never a bad thing to do. And yeah, I think that's about my time, isn't it? So there we go.
Well, yeah, so I mean, Ben makes some excellent points, particularly around facilities. With fencing, we've had to organise a number of competitions outside the Warwick Sport EFA, and we've had a lot of problems with that, so I support those. But I also think a big problem for off-campus clubs is transport. It's important not to realise that that's not just a problem that affects off-campus clubs, it also affects non-Bucks clubs and even Bucks clubs that have non-Bucks teams, so it's a really big issue to address. I think it's worth trying to expand the use of parking permits further. There will be more parking permits handed out to sports clubs this year than ever before. It's definitely something that's worth looking at expanding. Otherwise, we need to start looking at alternatives there as well. Minibuses are problematic due to insurance issues, the same with driver pools. So I think the SU should really look to create discount relationships with actual travel companies, whilst also supporting club drivers better by reducing the cost of parking on campus, for example, or better reimbursing fuel rates, etc.
Thank you. Okay, your next question is, do you have any ideas for encouraging male sports members to engage in inclusive projects such as Sexism in Sport Task Force?
So the Sexism in Sport Task Force is absolutely vital, and I think its publication in particular is a really big chance to really positively affect sport at this university, and in particular a way that just really positively affects everyone that wants to participate. And as a result, I think it's really important to publicise its benefits really strongly. I think students can quite often be oblivious to its publication, and if they're oblivious to its publication and its benefits, they'll therefore be less willing to engage with it going forwards. So I think we should work to publicise it better. We can present at, say, Sports Assembly to execs to make execs more aware of the survey, and encourage all clubs, it is all clubs, in particular male clubs maybe, but all clubs, to share with their members. We could name clubs that engage positively and continue previous years' efforts to provide small financial rewards for clubs that do. I'd rather not provide sanctions to clubs that don't, but it's an option that we could potentially look into. But I really think the main point is just publicising its work better and more strongly. We need to make it more integral to how clubs operate. We need to have a bit of a little culture change, so that the task force, it can't be ignored by those that want to participate within sport.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very difficult question. Engagement in the task force has been something both Emma and Will have had to work on as well. So there is no just one size fits all easy answer to it. But what we can really push for is just getting that engagement by really highlighting cases where it's worked and linking that task force and the results that have come because of it to successful programmes that have happened. For example, I believe Warwick Sport have their Women's Night In coming up soon. So linking the two together, trying to find ways to show that the task force is working and ways to make clubs, especially male clubs as well, want to get involved in it, because just forcing people to do it doesn't really achieve the goal that you want, because you want buy-in at the end of the day rather than just people being there because they have to be or because they want funding for their club, although potentially small amounts of funding does help get that initial engagement.
Thank you. Okay, and your last question is from online. What experiences do you have which suit this role, and how do you think these have prepared you for a job as a full-time officer in the SU?
I mean, I think my number one key bit of experience is the vast majority of the points on my manifesto I have seen implemented at Southampton 4 years ago with my brother as VP Sports. So I have that clear idea of how it can be done. I've seen it done already, so I just want to implement that now at Warwick. In terms of personal experience, I've been involved in national governing bodies affiliated to Bucks, so I know a lot of outside the Warwick bubble, how other universities work, the issues those unis face, how they've solved them, and more importantly, how in some areas they have a better deal for sports than we do here. And that's where I really want to bring some of that experience across to Warwick and get the best deal we can for our students. In terms of clubs as well, I've been involved in a wide range of clubs. I've started up windsurfing, so I feel that puts me in quite a good position to be able to act on sports clubs' interest and student voice in general.
Thank you. Louis?
So this year I've been the president of the fencing club at the university, and not only has this given me really valuable experience at the actual practicalities of running a student sports club here, but it's also developed a number of skills elsewhere. Like this year I've had to negotiate contracts, I've had to engage with external organisations, in particular things like NGBs, but not restricted to those. And I've had to organise large events with the club as well, sporting and otherwise. So that's a really wide range of experience that's really suited well to the role of VP Sports, and it's got that holistic benefit. I've also been chair of the sports forum this year. I've interacted well with the SU in particular, and it's allowed me a really great understanding of a really wide range of sports clubs and how they operate at this university. We've spent a large amount of time this year information gathering, testimonial gathering, and it's really developed my understanding of how all sorts of clubs operate: big, small, Bucks, non-Bucks, however you want to take it. I've also therefore had experience operating within student council as well. I've attended both so far this year, and I've spoken multiple times. I've stuck up for sports interests, as a number of you here will testify. Is that me?
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. And now we're going to move on to the media society. So, Paul.
Do you want to let Raw go first?
Okay, Raw. Sure.
Thanks. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but I know there can be a lot of sort of anxiety around joining a sports club, or misconceptions that people think certain sports clubs are only for certain types of people. So what will you do as VP for Sports to ensure that sport is inclusive for every single student at Warwick?
Is it me first?
I mean, I can go first if you want, but it's up to
No,
you.
I'm okay. So again, there's been a lot of work done this year to try and increase the level of inclusivity within sports. The Sportswear for All Fund is set up by Emma again this year. Has done really valuable work in making sure that sports can really offer this really inclusive offer. I'd seek to enhance that as well, widen that, so to allow more clubs to engage with that than ever. The Sexism in Sport Task Force as well is vital. It's changing sort of culture around sports in a way that ensures that it's inclusive for all. And then it's just continuing to work with organisations like Warwick Sport to really promote this active lifestyle. We need to make it inclusive and make it integral to the sporting experience as well. And we can create a lot. If we enhance the use of say intramural sports or just casual events as well, like charity events, we can really engage people that don't want to engage with sports in a particularly hardcore way, but they can do that casually whilst also then maintaining our sort of more sport-focused approach elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it is important to note there are so many different kind of avenues that inclusion in sport comes in and making people feel welcome. It's like there are so many different reasons people might not want to get involved in sport. So financial is definitely a big one, especially with the cost of living crisis. So expanding the work Emma's done, which has been amazing, setting up these grant funds, so like entry fees, as well as kit and the initial joining fee. Then you've also got, again, honestly, there's such a wide range of issues. So it's about signposting to clubs which are already being really welcoming. So that will set an example for other clubs to see, oh, this club's doing it well, what can we copy from them? And again, leading people who are potentially a bit nervous about joining a club for whatever reason to a club that they know is really welcoming to them as well at the same time. And that's really what we need to be doing.
What will you do to support sports club execs in their roles, especially in the transition periods when new execs are taking over?
Okay, so that is a point on my manifesto, and I'm really keen to do more with this, which is about the training that execs go through during term 3, because it is a really stressful time with your exams as well. So I think there are potentially ways we can be training our execs better, but also in a much more succinct way, and in a way that's potentially more productive for them. So like you go into any of the big training sessions in the Oculus, and just have a look around and see how many people are sat there on their laptops doing work. So that just makes me think potentially there's a better way we can train people up. Maybe we're running separate sessions for people that are already on exec and people that are new to exec, and maybe running, for example, with things like the active bystander training, maybe looking for ways we can do it in a more intensive way after exams rather than during exams. Still deliver all the essential information, still over the same time frame, just in a way that doesn't interfere with exec studies as well, because it definitely needs to. Sorry.
Okay, Louis?
So I agree with all of that. I think there's always ways that you can improve the level of training that you offer execs in term 3. But I also think it's important to realise that the execs transition period and the execs work doesn't end after term 3. And term 3 is different in so many ways to the other terms as well. We need to provide a bit more support, constant support to execs throughout the year. So I as VP Sports would work hard to engage with execs and provide them with all the support they require, building on the work I've done already as Chair of Sports Forum this year, and just make sure that execs feel supported throughout the whole duration of their role. We don't want to abandon our execs after term 3.
Thank you. Paul?
Hi, I'm Emily. How do you feel about criticism faced by Warwick sports clubs for their focus on bucks? And what will you do, and you kind of covered this with your question, what will you do to encourage active participation in sports for people like me who are unfit but enjoy fun games?
Are we answering those together, or is this two separate?
I think it's similar.
I was just thinking about time limits as well.
Yeah, fun minute for you.
Can you repeat the questions please?
Yes, of course. How do you feel about criticism faced by Warwick sports clubs for their focus on bucks, and what will you do to encourage active participation in sports clubs for people like me who are unfit but enjoy a fun game?
So from the Bucks focus point of view, obviously the Bucks focus is what gives the university the Bucks points, and it's what gets us into the Bucks league tables, and that is the most obvious way that sports provides that reputation. But it's important to realise that's not the only way, right? And if we make active lifestyles, as I say, the more integral part of the student lifestyle, that just brings so many benefits. It increases the level of quality of life for students. increase just the level of fitness of students, the health of students, the happiness of students. There's studies that prove all of that sort of stuff. So I think we need to work and better support our non-Bucks teams, and as I detailed earlier, there are ways we can do that. For people like you who want to engage more, again, Warwick Sports Plan is a really big starting step for that, about making that active lifestyle and integral. There's ways that we can create more work with, say, intramural sport or charity events, for example, that allow casual sports students who want to engage with sport to engage better, whilst also working on things like the cost of, say, gym memberships, etc., which are too high and very, very they can be prohibitive to students as well.
Any other?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to shifting that university and Warwick sports attitude, and they're already on the steps to doing that, which is really good to see, towards looking at just engagement in sport in general. And at the end of the day, a lot of that does come down to funding, but also giving clubs facility use and just getting as much non-Bucks training going on as well, and travel to non-Bucks events as well needs to happen. So another part of that also relates to the funding that the SU gets, because they have a big block of funding that's ring-fenced for Bucks, and that has been increased, but it's about getting our funding we get that isn't necessarily for Bucks and is more general increased as well, so then we can use that to support all sorts of things, including engagement for whoever wants to get into sports, making sure they can do that. And that is really important to me next year, and that's on the manifesto.
I think it's important just to consider the ways that we can do this.
Sorry. Any other questions from the board?
One more, sorry. So many societies, sports societies on campus have a troubled relationship with alcohol in terms of their social events and what goes on. How would you work, what's your opinion of this and how it relates to team building? And secondly, how would you work with other members of the SU to change how this relationship works?
Yeah, I mean, it is an issue that a lot of people have and a lot of clubs face, and I believe that clubs should offer a wide range of socials from drinking to non-drinking, but personally I'm a really big fan of the socials that sit somewhere in the middle, so ones where you can go have a pint or not have a pint at all, and everyone can mix, everyone can get to know each other in a way that is chill for a lot of people. A lot of it also depends on the sports club, so a lot of them have different atmospheres which are potentially set by which members they have at the start of the year, but just making sure the options of potentially more sober socials are there without that coming at the detriment to the drinking socials that we all know and love, such as circling, because that definitely still needs to keep going well into the future.
Can you repeat the question, please?
So the relationship between drinking and alcohol and sports society on campus is pretty troubled, and some people are forced into doing it. How would you work with other members of the SU to change how that relationship works, and do you view that as a bad relationship?
How would I work with other members of the SU?
Other members of the SU, other officers such as welfare.
I think things like circling, it's important to maintain circling as a concept, right? Like, it's a real point of difference for the union. This is a uni that sometimes gets accused of not having many traditions, and actually circling is one of those. But it's, as you say, it's important to maintain a wide range of socials. At fencing this year, for example, we've had a really wide range. We do things like board games nights, etc. Sober socials there. I think it's important to, as you say, it's important to work with other officers. We can work with the VP for SOCS to provide sort of SOCS and societies joint socials that are very inclusive and that anyone can attend. And then we need to work with other officers in the SU to make sure that the circling experience never gets out of hand either, right? So we provide strong support to clubs that want to circle, particularly within university buildings, whilst also maintaining that things like initiations and adoptions don't get out of hand either, which again, as VP for sports, I have a big role in formulating.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, we'll move on to anyone on the floor. Okay. Emma, we'll go first.
First of all, obviously you both have done part of what you mean, and whoever gets it, either of you will be great. My question is, how will you approach transgender inclusion both at Warwick and also in the book space?
Do you want to go first, or do you want to?
Yeah, so obviously it's a sensitive topic. So a lot of the work that you've started this year with the Sportswear for All Fund, that's really important. We need to make sure that clubs have the ability to provide inclusive opportunities for transgender students to participate regardless, and it's not the only way that the Sportswear for All Fund can benefit clubs, but it is a significant way. Fencing has taken advantage of it to buy flat chest protectors to allow transgender students to better engage with fencing. Sorry, can you just repeat the second half?
Yeah, so how will you approach transgender inclusion both at Warwick and also at Bucks as well?
So the Bucks point, we've obviously got to work within our NGB guidelines. Bucks does submit to NGB guidelines, but it's important to make sure that we can provide clubs as much support as possible. If they've got any queries or any issues with those guidelines, that we are able to help them along with those, and we can connect them with the relevant NGB officials to make sure that they have a proper understanding of those, and make sure that we can be as inclusive as guidelines allow.
Yeah, I mean, it is an issue that is quite serious in sports right now, and we, as a collective, need to do something to fix the issue. But I think the issue is kind of like split into two separate parts. You've got elite level, which as a university we can't do loads to affect. We can encourage NGBs to come up with their solutions specific to their sports and make sure things happen, but it's really just about encouraging and using our voice to make sure that happens. Where we can do a lot more is on our campus level as a university, and just making sure that our sports clubs are as welcoming as possible for transgender and non-binary students. So I know the climbing club has done a lot of work towards that, and I've been involved with them in that, and that's been really positive. But I also know that the solutions each club uses. Okay, fair.
Sorry. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, my question is, sexist and misogynistic behaviours obviously still a really big problem in sports society. I think they've got a lot of minorities of joining sports societies, and they can also produce quite problematic gender spaces with all male clubs or all female clubs. So I'm just wondering what you would do to tackle sexist and misogynistic behaviours in sports society.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is sexism and misogyny is just unacceptable in sport at Warwick. That is as simple as. How you make sure it doesn't happen, that's a much harder problem to tackle. So that is something which is probably quite useful to work with the university on. So you've got the report and support system in place, so it's making sure that's efficient with signposting people to it, and then acting on information we get if that is the possible solution we can. I know there's some stuff in the works already, but making sure we can then bring these issues to sports clubs when they arise, and encourage them to sort it out.
So so again, I mean, the sexism in sport task force is a really key opportunity, and I've already detailed how I'd seek to make that a really integral part of sports club experience. So we have the correct information to be able to then go act on that. And Ben's absolutely right to then mention report and support. It's key that we allow execs to be fully informed as to how they can approach that. It's already a big part of exec training, but maybe we can make that more, again, integral to how we communicate with the execs throughout the entire year. You're absolutely right, it's a massive issue to tackle, and it's just about we maintain the momentum on that. We don't let it slip. We make sure that all the positive work we're doing to fight misogyny within sport is continued. And that when issues are raised, we deal those proactively, sensitively, and to the satisfactory standard of those at risk.
Thank you.
I think it was mentioned earlier, but there's a few sports clubs that are also sort of on the border of a society. I'm in South Society, and it is a sports club, but also what we mostly do is socials. And I think it's quite hard to know where we fit in within the SU as a whole, because we're not quite a sports club, or we are, but also we don't quite fit in with everyone, and it's just how would you work to improve that so that everyone sort of feels like they fit in somewhere and belong, I guess.
Is it me?
I think so.
So I'd aim to create a more distinctive dividing line between sports and societies, and that's not pushing necessarily clubs and societies into one group, but making sure that they belong to one, so that they get the support. They don't end up in this sort of ether in the middle where they don't get the proper support from either group, if that makes sense. And I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, Warwick Snow, for example, that absolutely, you know, we need to be able to provide them with the appropriate support. And again, that's obviously something that I'd be able to work with the VP for Stocks with in engaging and, you know, creating that more solid dividing line there.
You said you were a surf, right? Can I interest you in windsurfing at all? But no, I mean, I think a lot of this issue also comes down to the whole off-campus club issue. Because for you guys, I'm guessing part of your issue is having to pay that off-campus fee, and you can tell me, what do you guys see for that price? I mean, that is the point. That is the point. Like, so it's about working with Warwick Sport, and because you guys go to Bucks, you are a sports club at the end of the day, but it's working with Warwick Sport to make sure you guys get a good deal while still being a sports club is kind of my aim with it all.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for any more questions, so thank you, Dan and Louis. Before the next one, we're going to have a 5-minute access break, so please be back here at 45, so 42. Thank you. We're about to start back up, so welcome back from the access break. Sorry for using that, I don't like using it, but you made me. I'll have the presidents come up now, so the president candidates, not presidents, yeah. So for this one, just before we start, before you start answering each question, I'm just going to say the order of who answers this time, because there's 3 of you. So just to let you know. Okay, so I'll just randomly generate that in my brain, so no bias. Okay, so we're going to start with the online questions, then as usual to media societies, and then to the floor. So, okay. First online question is, how would you improve transparency and accountability of the SU if you believe it needs improving? And we'll start with Marie.
I think it's a very difficult question to tackle because who can decide whether it is transparent or not? And probably the students and the staff themselves. And therefore, the feedbacks, of course, are very important, and the mechanisms that are put in place. And so what is the most important thing to do is probably work with the IT team, so they could send out emails to the right people, and so it's inclusive for everyone, and everyone can have access to it.
Thank you. Anaya?
When it comes to transparency, I think there is a lot that the SU can do still. I think there are efforts that are being made, but there is a way to reach all students, and I think that's what we're lacking at the moment. I think currently we have quite a few groups of students who are very vocal and very engaged, but I think it's best to sort of expand our reach, I think. We can do that by empowering your voice, essentially, so making sure that ASV, motion deadlines, campaigns and project funding deadlines are all publicized and known well in advance, and that we are actually collecting feedback from the average student. And yeah, just sort of focusing all of our efforts on that. I could go on, but I'm conscious of time.
Molly?
So the sort of all-student vote system is not transparent. I assume a lot of you, because you're here right now, are quite interested in student politics, and especially how the SU works. And I don't know if any of you have submitted motions, but I myself have been involved with submitting 2 motions, and even in the second one I was learning new things about how the process works. So clearly there's an issue there. So like, first of all, the process of which the motions go through isn't clear, isn't advertised to students. I don't know if a lot of you know, but like the all-student vote isn't the final point for these motions. There is a board of trustees after that. And even if I say that to you, some of you are nodding, do you even know who sits on that board of trustees? Probably not. I didn't. I had to have an extensive search about who these people actually were. So it's about advertising how these systems actually work. Also, it's really hard to actually find the time, especially with complications caused by the cost of living crisis, lots of students having to work, to have the time to actually partake in these systems. So we really need to work to make sure that the university is accessible on all points.
Sorry, okay, thank you all. So your next question is, what experience do you have which suit this role, and how do you think these have prepared you for a job as a full-time officer in the SU? We'll start with Molly.
So obviously I haven't been a full-time officer before, but I have been execs on societies. I currently sit on the Sustainability Forum and on the Student Council, and I've been part of the bylaw committee, so I have a really good understanding of like how these SU systems and processes work. And I actually think that it puts me in sort of a really good perspective to sort of criticise and to look from the outside of like the full-time officer positions. And look at, okay, how do I feel like these people aren't representing me? And take a perspective from there and take steps from there.
Thank you. Marie?
So personally, I am a first year, and I know that can be seen as a disadvantage, and so may question the audacity that I have standing right here in front of you guys. But I think it's an advantage because I will bring new perspectives, and my past experience also shows that I am really involved. So back in the days where I was not in the university, I was the president of a lot of societies and also the representative of many courses and especially my own course. I also did a charity event, and I was managing all the finances and, for example, the critiques that were involved in it. So I could face and be the foremost advocate for that society and for that organization. And that brings me to a point that I know how to allocate all the different jobs and all the different tasks for it to be very effective and for the change to be implemented.
Thank you. And I.
Oh, well, I think that I've got a sort of good breadth of experience when it comes to the SU and its processes. When I was a fresher, I ran for course rep, and I was course rep for 2 years in the Department of Economics. And I really I very much challenged the system right from the get-go and really tried to understand students' perspectives and how I can take them forward and represent them, especially marginalized students. So, I mean, I'm an international student, I don't know if you can tell by the accent, but a lot of our issues aren't at the forefront of university and SU politics, so I've sort of taken that throughout my journey. I was also part-time women's officer, so worked on what Naomi did with end-period poverty, expanded that quite a bit, and this year I'm Vice President for Welfare and Campaigns, so I'm a full-time officer, and I've been in a lot of university spaces where I can actually see change being made, and as the SU's cost of living sort of campaign lead, I've also launched a lot of campaigns about it. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, how would you plan to get more people involved with the SU at a realistic and tangible scale? And we'll start with Anaya.
Right. Again, this is one of my main priorities for the year, actually. If elected, I will focus mainly on making the student voice heard and making our processes transparent and accessible to them. So first and foremost, honestly, getting on the ground, hearing from the average student, because I think when we leave students to come to us, it does let certain student groups come to us first with their whatever they do need, but that does leave a gap, I think, in terms of the mass. Also publicizing ASVs, making that process, again, as Molly mentioned, the entire process of how an ASV does get carried through, that needs to be apparent to students, that needs to be explained clearly, just not just on a website, but just advertised. Also, I think policy toolkits, so making sure that students who haven't written motions before, for example, should be able to access those things easily and understand how to create change. And it's our job to empower them to do that. And I think also working to make sure that students understand that our purpose is to serve students first and to represent them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Molly.
So this splits into 2 sections, I think, right? So the first being like getting this information out to people, and I think replicating sort of the idea of the sort of societies fair and the sports fair would be really good if we had on the piazza during the all student vote weeks like different stands so students could advertise the motions. And I think not only would this increase sort of awareness that these all student votes were happening, it would mean that these aren't just words on a poster that people don't quite understand, and you can see the actual people that are pressing for these issues. And it also might push the importance of why you should vote in these things. And second of all, I think it's really, really important that all of these issues are intersectional. And one of the big reasons that people don't get involved is because they don't feel like they can, and they don't feel like they're being listened to. So it's important to create systems where people do feel like they're being included and do feel like they're being listened to.
So I've conducted with third year's WBS students a lot of research, and I've done a report on a lot of students who have complained about how they could not get involved in the SU, or just how they do not really feel eligible. And I think that's one of the main issues, that a lot of people are keeping silent and do not raise a voice. And for that, it's really important to be in the field and to talk to them directly, because if we look at the data, not many people respond to the questionnaires online. Not many people are really responsive in general in the streets on campus. So in the end, what's most important is to allocate a certain time where a lot of people can gather. And for example, at the beginning of the year, a lot of students are not aware of the accessibility that they have or the opportunities that they have. And so it's about knowledge, but also how we could go towards that knowledge, how we can access the knowledge.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. So the next question is, how will you address SU culture and ensure the smooth running of the organisation? Marie?
Could you please repeat the question?
So how will you address SU culture and ensure the smooth running of the organisation?
I think a lot of people, well, I've done a lot of research to know what the SU is structured, but that was personal, and I think there is personally not enough information that is well organized and very available to everyone, and only if you search for it. And the main priority would be for it to be advertised and for people to know it exists.
Thank you. And Anaya?
Can you repeat the question, actually?
Yeah. How will you address SU culture and ensure the smooth running of the organisation?
I think it's not specific, but there are a plethora of problems with sort of SU culture and how politicized it is, I think, especially in recent times. I think politics needs to be at the core of it. The student voice needs to be at the core of it, in my opinion. So I think a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of attempts that we see, or students see as attempts at silencing them, need to be addressed, and the SU needs to become a more functional, cohesive organization, and that, I think, is down to communication, mostly. That is between the SU and student body, as well as within the SU, so departmentally as well.
Thank you. And Molly?
So Anaya touched on it briefly. From like a sustainability forum perspective and trying to like push the SU to be zero waste, one of the issues that we found is that all the departments are so separated that it's really hard to have conversations with people, because often you'll ask a question, they'll be like, oh, I'm not sure, and you'll be like, okay, so who can I ask? Oh, I'm not sure about that either, actually. And we face the same thing with trying to push for student workers to be paid a real living wage. There's often groups within the SU that also aren't sure what else is going on in the SU. And so it's not only sort of a point of connecting societies with the students' union to sort of make change, but also connecting the structures that already exist within the students' union. And that way we can sort of have a more cohesive structure and really advocate and push for that change more efficiently and more effectively.
Thank you. And the next question is, how will you work towards implementing the plant-based universities motion that passed at last ASV? So I think we'll start with Molly.
Yeah. So I don't know how many of you have read the plant-based universities motion, but it actually outlines pretty clearly how they want it implemented. So this is by harnessing the plant-based university campaign team that has been offered to the SU to discuss not only how this could be costed out, what options could be offered, but also to provide catering teams that could be used as consultants and connect Warwick SU with other student unions that have already achieved this. And I also think that another important point around the plant-based motion is, again, this like transparency around all student votes and the fact that these motions detail a lot more than what people think they do.
Thank you. Marie?
I think it's a very difficult question because all of these motions are sometimes rather niche and not many people are aware of what they imply, and therefore it's really important to put it on the spotlight. And I know that it's very difficult to know what cause should be put higher than any other, but I think that motion is very important to tackle, and a president cannot only take that decision. It should also ask the entire full-time officers and also part-time officers and the entire SU staff, because it should be a global decision.
Thank you. And Anaya?
I have read the motion. It's a pretty good motion. And I think that the SU can achieve it in the long term. I believe that it has been communicated that it did pass, just with sort of amendments for how the SU can sustainably do it. I think with motions like that, I think it's really important that throughout the process of getting a motion to ASV and then having it pass, it is made clear to motion proposers and to essentially students who do want to get involved how things can happen. Is exactly like the entire process needs to be transparent. This is also touching on Marie's point about democracy. but I think it's a priority for the SU. I think we definitely should push for it, and we definitely should see it implemented in the next couple of years, because we have one plan to live on, really. So, yeah, that's all I can say.
Thank you. Okay. And your next question is, do you have any ideas on ways to increase student engagement and communication between the SU and all student groups? So we'll start with Anaya.
Yes, sure. I think we've seen a lack of engagement in at least the past year and the past couple of years, a trend of not being or having underrepresented groups. Say international students are one big part of that, so well, I can speak for them, I guess, kind of reaching out to them, making sure that we are catering to all students and not just one specific group of them. Either that be sort of at Circle if you prioritize that, versus democracy if we prioritize that. I think it's more important to reach out to each student group individually, get their thoughts on it, get their thoughts on what we could do better. So, for example, going out to international students, making sure that their sort of pre-arrival and on-arrival methods of support are cemented within the SU, so providing a tailored service through our SU Advice Center would be really good. Also lobbying the university to actually increase support and methods of, again, well-being and just diversifying all of that. I think if we are voices that are loud enough in those spaces and are carrying their interests forward, we would represent them.
Thank you. Molly?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to go back to a question that was asked, or a point that was raised yesterday, about how minority societies feel like they're not being supported enough through funding. And as far as I'm aware, the SU sort of cap funding for societies that have less than 100 people. But obviously these minority community societies are always going to have less than 100 people, because that's just sort of why that society exists in the first place. And second of all, the SU already have systems like the Ethnic Minorities Officer, LGBTQ Officer, Widening Participation Officer. But if we're recognising that these students struggle to get involved in these spaces anyway, why is your solution positions that not only take up time of these students, but also reward them with little to no benefits? So I think making sure that these students and these societies are correctly compensated for their work and for their time, maybe running awareness campaigns and things like that.
Sorry, Molly.
Sorry. That's okay.
Sorry. Marie?
I've talked to a lot of societies, and especially those ones who are representing minorities, and they have raised a lot of questions and inquiries from the past years to the SU, and a lot of them have not been answered. And so it's not about a question how involved are the students and how involved people are to raise the inquiries, but how we are tackling them. So it's not a them problem, but it's more us problem, and how we are willing to listen and how we are willing to implement change. I know that there are so many more procedures and that there's a whole big step to make a change and a lot of paperwork indeed. And so what we should tackle is more the paperwork and how we can be effective in making the exact change that we want to provide to the minorities and just as a whole for the representation.
Thank you. Final online question. If you could change any one thing about the SU, what would it be? So we'll go with Marie first.
So I think I really thought about this because I have never been in the SU, so I cannot really talk from experience. But from my past experience that I already had is communication and connection. So connection is divided into groups. Of course, communication within the whole organization, but also how well we are all integrated in it, and how our well-being is in the matter and is concerned. So that's one thing that I would prioritize, the connection. Yeah, that would be the one word that would stand out for me.
Thank you. And Anaya?
That's a very heavy question. Again, as sort of from another perspective, having been involved in the SU for so long, I think I can see, but we can see so many fractures, so many issues that we can tackle. But I think one thing that I'd focus on immediately, if I could, is communication again, as Marie has touched upon. Communication between the SU, looking at our structures, how they work, are they effective, do they accurately and genuinely represent students, do they reach the people they need to reach? So I focus on communication, both internal and external.
Thank you. And Molly?
Representing students and student issues. If any of you have had any interactions with processes like the all-student vote, even to the extent of if you've gone to the SU with like personal problems or like issues that you've faced on campus, do you feel like they've correctly represented you in the issues that you're facing? I'd say no. Yeah, coming from a student worker, I don't feel like I've been correctly represented, and that's what needs to change.
Thank you. That's all of the online questions, so now we'll move on to the media societies. So, Paul?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Emily from Ball. What has motivated you to run for this role, and how could this motivation be more widespread to encourage wider participation from the student body in increasing the turnout to run for positions in future elections and in the polling booths next week?
Thank you. We'll start with Molly.
So the reason I was inspired to run for this role, I debated it a little. I've been involved with sort of pushing motions and things, so obviously it was in the back of my mind that maybe this is something I could do. And then when we were pushing for the motion for students to be paid a real living wage, when we were told that that motion was ratified, but the part about the SU paying students a living wage was taken out of it, and I asked why, and I explained the Board of Trustees made that decision, and asked if there was someone I could speak to. It was in fact a member of the full-time officer team that we were directed to, which poses the question of sort of why had they not had those meetings before we had had them. And so I thought, I can do this. I want to make this change for students, and that's why I'm running for this role. And so I think other students need to know that they can also do that, and they can also make change for themselves.
Thank you. Marie?
Personally, it's probably a personality trait. So it can be a disadvantage and also an advantage. I'm a big chatterbox. So back in high school, I would be the one student that would never stop talking. And so that what motivated me to be a president, because I love talking to people, I love understanding them, and I am myself part of 4 minorities, if we can say that. And I feel like I have not been really well represented in this university, and that's how I really want to change that. And as much as I understand that not everyone is part of a minority, and saying that we should raise voices only from minorities would be not a very good job as being a president, because you would embody only one part of the university. And therefore, for me, what could be really incentive and insightful for the next students to run for SU is just talking. Again, communication will solve everything.
Thank you, Marie. And Anaya?
Thanks, Emily, for the question. It's a deeper one, because I didn't think I was going to run until sort of a term ago. I think because as soon as I got to uni, I thought, why not get involved in the SU? Why not get involved and fight for students and fight for people on my course who were treated horribly during COVID, because we were a joint degree. I've always had this sort of will to represent students, especially those who have been treated unfairly, and represent them and make sure that their voice is heard and they're listened to. So throughout my work as part-time women's officer, I thought, why not run for a full-time role? I think I can do more with it. And I did. I expanded on campaigns I had already launched, and did the Free Breakfast Club, things like this. And now I see an opportunity where if I do get elected as president, I can make our voices heard at a national and regional level. And I can see already opportunities to do that. And yeah, just that opportunity is what prompted me to run.
Thanks. Any other questions from the board?
I got one more. So recently it's been sort of a topic on campus about work in its relations to arms manufacturers between the university itself. What are your opinions on those relationships, and furthermore, what will you do to maybe stop them, or what's your opinion, what are you going to do about them?
Thank you. Anaya?
Right. My opinions on it are, I think, pretty well known, because as officers you are elected to represent the people and the politics that they stand for. Obviously against it, I think that the SU already has a policy in place about demilitarization, and standing by it, I think that the university needs to divest. We know what's happening, we know it's horrible, we know exactly how many people have been affected, we know communities here, including my own communities, have been affected deeply. And it's a very difficult issue to talk about, but we need to talk about it, and we need to make sure that our voices are heard, and that the university has to listen to us. So to me, it's very important that we stand by our policies, that we stand by our sort of our position and our duty to our people and our students, really. So yeah, very pro-it, essentially.
Molly?
Yeah, so fully agree with that. I've been actively involved in the demilitarisation Warwick campaign. Recently got flagged up for speaking about it on a climate panel, which sort of presses how much of a sensitive topic it sort of is. But I think it's really important not only for Warwick to divest from such a big sort of militarisation companies, but also to support students in going into careers that aren't military based. I know that I have lots of friends in STEM who actually don't feel like they're being advertised jobs that aren't BAE Systems, Rolls-Royce, things like this. And like that's really wrong, and that's something that I'm really, really keen to change. Obviously, the issue of Warwick being such a militarised university, I don't know if you've seen the posters around campus, it is tied with Bristol, the most militarised university in the UK. And we've obviously been fighting for a long time for that to change. And so I'm keen to continue pushing that, but for the short term, making sure that other opportunities are becoming available to students.
Thank you. And Marie?
So Warwick has a past of militarization, and that's well known, and we cannot ignore that. And the fact that we're beginning to tackle it is already one big step, but it's not enough, and we need to keep pushing forward. And that's one of the key issues that probably we are facing right now, because as much as it is niche, not many people are aware of that. Because it is depoliticized, we maybe should politicize it even more and push for the fight.
Okay. Any more from the board?
How do you plan to keep yourself and the SU informed about the issues that matter most to students, particularly for groups that you do not represent personally?
Thank you. We'll start with Marie.
So I'm not representing a lot of groups, but I talk to a lot of societies and a lot of groups. And probably as a president, I will be in the field during, for example, working hours. I'll just try to have 5 minutes of their time or speak to the presidents of the societies, and of course work with the colleagues that I will have with the officers that will, I'm sure of that, do a really good job at searching for everything, and I think it's really about teamwork.
Thank you. Anaya?
I think that's a good question on how to represent sort of all students and not just the students that you represent. I think we've seen how difficult it can be as well when things that are highly politicized sort of make our way. But for me, I think that would include not just talking to students, but reaching out to certain students, I guess cultural societies that are heavily underrepresented, for example, and sort of not, I think, honestly, the average student who doesn't feel accurately represented by the Students' Union. I think we need to get their perspective, sort of get their ideas and understand why they think that the SU doesn't work for them. And essentially, this would require a lot of groundwork, I think, as well as surveys, but there is only so much we can do except actually approach students to get their opinions on things, and not just in our really highly politicized student groups.
Thank you. And Molly?
Yeah, so you touch on other groups that you don't represent. I actually think it's quite a negative outlook to think that just because you're part of groups that you have the voice to represent them. Obviously we elect sort of people to overarch and to speak for certain things, but there needs to be wider structures in place to get a better idea of how all people in those groups can be represented, because all these issues are super intersectional, and it's like really not constructive to only view these from either one group or from one person's experiences. And to get more people involved, not only do you need to make it so people feel like they can get involved, but you also obviously need to increase engagement. And I would really like to do that by running like a fair that sort of discusses the SU more, much like my Rosebank campaign that I ran, that had like roses and stuff that sort of encouraged students to come because they didn't think that that's what they were going to discuss. They were just coming for a rose. But then actually when they got talking to you, they were actually really excited about how they could get involved.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Oh, could I add something real quick?
We're kind of running out of time, sorry.
This is Luke from the board. My question is, which previous SU campaign do you believe was the most successful, and which do you believe you could provide more support with?
Okay, Molly?
I quite, enjoyed isn't the right word, but I think the spiking campaign was a really good campaign to increase awareness. I know I especially learned lots from that, but I think that needs to be sort of expanded and continued on, and working with groups on campus such as Sexpression that are already doing this work to sort of set that in stone and to increase in visibility in these areas.
Marie?
I think one campaign that I have not been part of, but I've been really fascinated with the outcome, is from the volunteering society. They've done an amazing job at raising money, and they're coming to raise awareness. I have been involved in one of their events, and we talked not to students, but also people who are outside of this university, and they were so engaged, and I think that is one campaign that we could push forward. And also the campaigns for all the wars that are currently going on. I know that just on campus there are so many who are involved, and I think that's just a beautiful action.
Thank you. And Anaya?
It's going to be difficult to pick just one. There's so many good ones that my predecessors have also created. So, for example, Report and Support was an SU campaign which has been clearly adopted by the university and has been really successful and actually helped us get to the root of issues by tackling culture and active bystander program, things like that. But I mean, for me, in recent years, I think the cost of living campaign has been vital to support students. So a couple of things that I have done to support it is Free Breakfast Club and End Period Poverty. I think that things that are community-led and community-based and that actually encourage students to support each other through a system that is made for them and not just there sort of in a top-down way. I think that's been really vital, seeing those connections and seeing that expand. And if elected, I will hopefully make those permanent, as well as push for, I think in general, the cost of living campaign has had work streams. We work with the university on things. So for example, the SU getting a real living wage for its workers. That is something that is hopefully achievable. Yeah,
Thank
sorry.
you. I think that's all from board now, so can we move on to Raw?
If elected, you will chair the Board of Trustees of the SU. How will you work with the other trustees to ensure that the SU meets its obligations as a registered charity and that decision-making at this level is communicated to the students?
We'll start with Anaya.
Great question. Genuinely, that is a really good question. I think because of the lack of clarity about board and how people are, say, appointed or elected to it, that is a really contentious issue, I think, with student body at the moment. So, really good question. If elected, and if I do become chair of board, I think it would be necessary to, first of all, make clear the structure of board and how it's set out, how students do have a voice and in what way students feel like they don't. Communicate that clearly to students. Make all of the board minutes, for example, available right after sort of a board meeting has adjourned and things are ratified or not ratified. This is down to communication and lack of clarity surrounding what board does and how it does, because RSU is a registered charity. We do have to abide by charity law. That includes certain caveats that we have to make. But I think also the whole issue about all student vote motions being not ratified at board by things that could have been corrected during impact assessment. Nothing. Thank you. I'm done.
Molly?
I think what you mentioned about minutes being available is a really good point, but we revisit the issue of accessibility and minutes aren't an accessible resource. I think what happens in a Board of Trustees meeting needs to be like maybe put in a notification on the SU website, maybe minimised into an Instagram post, something that students can quickly look at and go, oh, okay, that's happened, cool. It also, when you're actually talking to, when you're having the meetings, once your motions haven't been ratified, or if they have been ratified, the sections that have been taken out, it's not given, that information isn't given to you accessibly. There's a lot of like jargon and a lot of sort of like unnecessary waffle to try and make you feel a bit better about the fact that that's just been scrapped, and that needs to go. You touched on a bit before about how students were made aware of like the restrictions within the Board of Trustees.
Oh, running out of time.
Charity law.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Marie?
I think what's important, of course, the meetings are on point, and I think the decisions are really well done. But how we translate the outcome of the meetings need to be tackled, and it's about how we could transcript all the necessary changes that we are going to implement, and therefore it would be really nice to have, for example, meetings, but very brief ones, with the SU and the board together, and have just a briefing of everything that has been conducted, and also just notifications for all the students and the staff, so they are also aware of it.
Thank you.
What do you believe is the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues, currently facing Warwick students, and what will you do to combat this?
Marie?
I think, well, we are all concerned by this. We all cherish money, probably because of capitalism, but that is true. And I think the cost of living crisis is one big to tackle. And a very niche subject also is the buses. There is a big monopoly with one brand, and that is that they increase their pricings, and also in outlets such as Roots grocery store. Last year there was a promise of prices being frozen, and that is actually not true. It has been increased, I think it was in November, and so for me it's about the money, because a lot of people are suffering from precarity, and that should be tackled definitely.
Thank you. And Anaya?
I will echo Marie on this, honestly, because I've been working on it for quite a while, and I've, again, run surveys with the SU to figure out the actual impact on students. So the cost of living crisis, I think, is the most pressing and, I guess, immediate issue that people are focusing on national level as well. So if elected, I will continue, hopefully, being the lead on the cost of living campaign that the SU and the university collaborate on, push for the real living wage, for example, to be provided to all SU, make that an across-campus provision that we offer, embed the NPR Poverty Free Breakfast Club campaigns, obviously as permanent offerings that the SU should offer regardless, as well as lobby nationally for affordable housing strategies, because there's a general election coming up, don't know if you've heard, but lobbying now and when the election is over, for example, to actually implement affordable housing strategies that prioritize students instead of disadvantage them would be essential. That also includes on-campus working with the university, their accommodation strategy, making sure that they are actually putting the student experience first. Yeah, sorry, thanks.
Molly?
Well, it is the cost of living crisis, isn't it? It's the number one issue facing students. It means you can't pay for your house, can't pay for your heating, can't pay for your food. Like, when you come onto campus, you walk into Roots, it's just soul-crushing, isn't it? Like, it's just horrendous, really. And it means that students are also barred from then getting involved in other things that they're passionate about, like sustainability, like demilitarisation. So yeah, cost of living crisis, number one problem.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for any more questions, so I can't open it up to the floor. But, of course, next week will be campaigns week. You'll see all your candidates out there campaigning. So if you have any questions, make sure to catch them out and about on campus, in Curiosity, on the piazza, or anywhere else. So